morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, we're talking about new technology and how that can improve the life of your building. I'm Nikki Jovicic from LookUpStrata, and I'm also the Managing Director of Tower Body Corporate, a body corporate management company in Queensland. I'm your host for this webinar, and today we're joined by Edwina Feilen from Sedgwick and Stephen Thornton from Voltin. To solve problems in strata buildings, we tend to fall back on past experiences using traditional methods. However, in this rapidly changing space, it is vital to be open to new technologies and innovations. In other LookUpStrata webinars this year, we've been speaking about this. We've had a ChatGPT for Strata Managers session and also a webinar about bringing your building into the 21st century. And so today, Edwina and Stephen are showing us some more AI uses within the industry. Let's take a holistic look at how we can harness new technologies while reducing costs and ultimately improving the life of your building. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that the information in this session, including the discussions arising from submitted questions and chat conversations, is not legal advice and should not be relied upon as advice. You should seek independent advice before acting on the information contained in the session. We welcome Edwina Feilen from Sedgwick. Edwina brings over 14 years of experience with the last 7 years dedicated to collaborating closely with Sedgwick's Strata clients. Her unique perspective as both a dedicated lot owner and a secretary of her owners corporation for the past 5 years has given her unique insights into the diverse challenges faced by owners corporations. In her role as manager of business solutions, Edwina is dedicated to helping clients navigate various building-related issues, encompassing matters such as addressing building defects, conducting forensic investigations, and assembling comprehensive scopes of work. Her daily commitment to Sedgwick's core philosophy of caring counts not only aligns with her passion for positive outcomes, but also contributes significantly to the well-being of the strata community, both from a customer and commercial standpoint. I also warmly welcome Stephen Thornton from Voltin, and Stephen brings 4 decades of comprehensive experience spanning the government and private sectors, including senior management roles and running a number of successful businesses. With 17 years dedicated to specialist high access engineering and maintenance services for the built environment, he possesses deep insights into the intricacies of assessing large built structures, particularly concerning structural maintenance and rectification needs. His extensive background led to the creation of Voltin, a pioneering technology disruptor that replaces traditional low-tech manual building inspections with cutting-edge, high-resolution visual data capture and AI-driven model structure. This advancement not only offers a more accurate approach to identifying and locating building defects, but also revolutionises proactive asset management. As a first-to-market solution in Australia, Voltin is reshaping the landscape of both reactive issue resolutions and long-term asset management. So we welcome both Edwina and Stephen. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Nikki. Great to be here. Very excited to be able to share with the group today what we know about artificial intelligence and how we're using it more broadly across our business.
All right, Edwina, I'll leave you to share your screen and start the presentation, and I'll join you later on for question time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nikki. So as Nikki alluded to today, we are going to be talking about, building innovation and how we use AI to assist in managing strata buildings. So today what we're going to be covering is what is artificial intelligence and why now, I guess. We'll also provide an overview of AI within the industry, as we've alluded to, and how we're using it particularly in the strata space, but we'll also touch on a few other areas of our business. Sedgwick has a very broad service offering. So whilst today is focused around strata and what we bring to that space, we do actually work very significantly in the insurance industry, and that does impact strata as well. And as a result of that, we're looking at how we use AI more broadly across our business. So we'll touch on that at a very high level. We'll give you some insights into the Voltin technology and how we're using that to change the landscape of how we look at and assess buildings and take a more proactive approach to I guess, maintaining buildings, as well as the remedial aspect when we identify problems in buildings. And throughout that overview, we'll also be providing some practical advice about how we apply and use the information we capture as part of that process. So firstly, we want to look at what is artificial intelligence. So as you can see there on the screen, according to Wikipedia, artificial intelligence is the intelligence of machines or software, as opposed to the intelligence of humans or animals. It is also the field of study in computer science that develops and studies intelligent machines. So AI may also refer to machines themselves. Obviously, there's a lot of definitions out there about AI, and the reason for that is because there's a lot of different applications for it, and it's being used in a lot of different ways, and therefore AI is not just one simple thing. So then we have to look at why AI, and I guess why now? So companies now have access to unprecedented amounts of data. So AI has long been regarded as the potential source of business innovation, and it takes that data, analyzes it, and translates it into usable information that can then provide disruption, as Nikki said in her introduction, assist with the development of innovation and how we do things differently and in more, I guess, advanced forms. When applied in combination, data analytics and automation can help businesses in areas where you might improve customer service, for example, or how you make changes in your supply chain, or as in the case of looking at buildings, how we capture information around building related issues and matters, and how we use that information to proactively maintain buildings, as well as when you've identified something, how we then use that to rectify building related issues. So today we'll be looking at a few different things around artificial intelligence. And some examples of those, as Nikki also touched on, is ChatGPT, which probably is one of the most well-known types of artificial intelligence in the marketplace at this particular point in time. It actually rose to the market, I guess, in November 2022, and we'll touch a little bit about that in a minute. We'll also be looking at robotics. So robotics, how we use robotics within our insurance-related business, as well as robotics in, I guess, the facility management space and in strata management and maintenance as well. We'll be looking at digital twin and also with the management of buildings, of course, the Voltin solution. So firstly, ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is a chatbot. So what that means is it's chat generative, predictive, pre-trained transformer that uses natural language and processing to create human-like conversational dialogue. So for those of you that may have been on the presentation a couple of months ago, we saw some actual live demonstrations of how ChatGPT works. And in Strata world, we've seen how Strata managers are using it to create letter formats and pro formas and documentation. But the important thing to remember about ChatGPT is that it's not perfect. So whilst it can provide a baseline of how a document may look or sound, it should only be that, a baseline, and you should need to put in your own touches and your own personal thoughts about what you want a final document to look like. Other areas that it's being used in is CV creation. But again, we should not always rely on that. Whilst it may make your CV look really special, it's not going to be a replacement for you when you're sitting in front of a panel at an interview. So there are limitations in how it can be used and should be used. So moving through into claims management, as I said at the start of the presentation, we deal heavily in insurance. And one of the key areas that we're looking at now is in our forensic accountancy team in Australia and US. We're looking at how we develop the use of machine learning to predict the value of business interruption claims. So what that does is it looks at predictive modelling and data analytics. It looks at what industry an insured might come from, what the period of indemnity may be, and how long that lasts, and how the policy should apply, and also what the revenue targets of that business might be. And taking all those pieces of information, the robots can analyze that data and actually work out what the value should be and how to settle that claim and pay that claim more effectively, more efficiently, and give a better outcome for the customer or the insured in their situation or of need. How robotics also links back to Strata is you would have come across a lot of innovation in terms of smart buildings in this day and age. So you have buildings that have intelligence built into them around access, fire safety systems, alert systems in line with the operations and mechanics of buildings, and right through to actual robots that help with maintenance types activities such as cleaning and the likes. So robotics is a big part of the AI space, both, as I said, on the claim side and as well in the strata and facility management aspect as well. And it's only growing on a daily basis. So now I'll move over to the digital twin. So Sedgwick partner with Sync Technologies, and we have been working with them, particularly in the claims space for the last couple of years, but we've also evolved this technology into the strata space, and we obviously also deal in strata claims, so it's quite useful in that area as well. So I'm going to play this video. It doesn't have any sound, but I'll give you a bit of an overlay what we're seeing as we go through. So essentially, it creates what is known as a digital twin, and it's a bit like you're going on a virtual reality tour. But throughout that process of being able to assess all types of surfaces within the building, whether that be roofs, ceilings, walls, and floors, you can pick up anomalies or issues and tag those particular problems within the structure itself. And then as part of that virtual reality, you can then attach additional documentation, photos, reports, and all those sorts of things as part of a digital file that then becomes, I guess, a go-to point in time of that particular building. As you can see, we've gone from the outside, we're just going into the inside common area stairwell of this building, and you'll sometimes see some little blue tags around the place, and that's those matter tags. The technology also allows you to measure particular elements of the building. So when you've finished and created the digital twin, we can share this information with third parties who then can use the information remotely to generate scopes of works, look more closely at the issues that have been identified during the scan. And as you saw there, it creates a 3D image of the actual building that it's scanning at the particular point in time. It can also create 2D and 3D floor plans, and that tagging function, as I said, allows it to actually store additional documentation that complements the issues that are being identified. The output can then be shared and distributed securely in an encrypted format and stored in the cloud. So AI, how does AI link back into the Sync platform? So we have AI-powered defect detection. So how does that work? So as you can see here, the specialized drones and cameras and sensors capture aerial images, and I'll just play this video as well, and you'll be able to see it in action. And those videos and images are uploaded into a trained AI engine, which is then able to identify the various issues that it is able to see at the time of scanning. So here you can see it going through and scanning, and it will pick up things like holes in roofs, cracked tiles, hail damage, all those sorts of anomalies that you would want pinpointed. And then you can actually use that digital file to, again, send it to third parties that can look more closely at what needs to happen in order to respond to those particular problems that have been identified. It takes that artificial intelligence from looking at hundreds and thousands of images, and then it compounds that, and that's what allows it to identify the anomalies and put a label, I guess, to it. So that's how that side of things works and functions. So how we use digital twin in the business, I've touched on a few things already, but there's quite a few additional aspects of where we think it's useful, I guess, in the strata space. So one is preparation of scopes of works, which, again, as I alluded to earlier, can be done from a remote location. It creates 2D and 3D floor plans. So this is great across the board, but it also is particularly advantageous in situations where you don't actually have plans, which in a lot of strata buildings that are older, they may not have those architectural plans. So this allows you to get some insight into what the actual structure and construction of the building looks like. From there, we can create detailed cost estimates. So you can get an idea of what the costs behind a particular scope of works are going to be to rectify issues relating to the building. We can use it for building condition reports, defect assessments, dilapidation surveys, and insurance valuations. And this is becoming even more and more relevant as we know that we are currently in a hard market when it comes to placing insurance, and insurers are consistently wanting more and more information about your building. So if you can be proactive in being able to provide that detail, that's a really, really handy tool to have as well. Maintenance management, again, taking that proactive approach, and the information we collect can be used to proactively put in place maintenance regimes and look more closely at, I guess, financially budgeting for those sorts of programs and issues. And again, as I said, the digital twin technology also has that measurement of building components, and it goes right down to 2 millimeters, within 2 millimeters or 98% accuracy when it comes to managing things remotely. So some very high level overview of the benefits of digital twins, some of which we've already touched on. So it becomes a permanent digital record via web link. You don't require any special licenses or applications. It's stored in the cloud, as I mentioned earlier, and you are able to access that at any particular point in time. The other thing that's great about having that permanent digital footprint is that, say you did do some works or there was an insurance claim and works and repairs were done, at any particular point in time, you can go back and reassess that particular building and then overlay the two files to see, have those changes been made, have those repairs been done effectively. And that's a really good ongoing record of your building and its management and maintenance into the future. It's faster and a more economical way to capture and store data and manage the buildings. As I said earlier, you can put additional information against any geolocated item within the digital twin, whether that's additional reports from specialists or photos or thermal images. They can all be stored within the digital file, so everything is in one place and one location. It reduces the need for multiple experts to attend site. So it's a very costly exercise to have an assessor, a building consultant, an engineer go to site when we can collect the information in this digital format and then pinpoint the problem areas. And if we do need to send somebody to site, we can navigate who that person needs to be and automatically send them to that particular location so they know what they're looking for. And that saves time and money. So it's a very efficient process. And it's a virtual reality digital twin that can be shared with many stakeholders, as I said, with insurers, other experts and owners. And particularly in the strata space, we know that we have a lot of international owners that have properties as investments. So it's great for sharing that sort of information with them remotely, and they can basically see virtually what is happening with their building at any particular point in time. So now we'll move over to Voltin. Sedgwick are very excited to be partnering with a channel partner agreement with Voltin. As it says there, Voltin's system is a world-first digitalised commercial building facade survey and assessment system. Again, it takes AI to another level, and I think it's going to be a game changer in helping us both proactively and reactively with the management of strata buildings in particular. So with that, I'll hand over to Steve, and he can go from there.
Thank you very much, Edwina. Firstly, let me just clarify what the Voltin system does. Effectively, we give a high-rise building an MRI. So we use high-resolution digital and thermal images. We've got LiDAR. We've got other sensors that enable us to not only capture digital images of the building, but also to have highly accurate metadata associated with those images. What that means is we can locate to within 5 millimeters what a particular defect or area on your building has a particular problem. Now, just as an example, that image that I'm showing you there shows you the power of the thermal examination. all of our imagery is synchronized between the white light and the thermal image. And the extraordinary ability of thermal imaging is that it actually sees what is invisible to the naked eye. In this case, that image highlights a central structure of an apartment building, which was supposedly a solid column that held up the entry section of the building, when in effect the builder had actually failed to core fill all of that structure with concrete. So initially we were called out to do the survey because they thought they had water leaks coming through the joints in the concrete. What they were horrified to find out is they actually didn't have any concrete in a panelled structure. Now that gives you an idea of what we can do. I'll just move on now to the next slide, and that gives you an overview of the whole process. Primarily, we're a technology company that provides data capture and asset inspection. We conduct an initial data analysis of all the imagery so that we filter out any anomalies, we filter out any inconsistencies before we send it off for the data process by machine learning. Now, if I can actually simplify what the whole machine learning process, if you imagine 1,000 erudite engineers sitting in a room picking over 500,000 photos, that's the power of AI. So it's actually transformed the identification process. It uses the same technology that everyone is familiar with in their daily lives. That is, it has facial recognition equivalency. It has number plate recognition equivalency, because what you've got is a machine learning at a higher rate than human beings can. And it only uses that information that's been gathered. It doesn't actually replace the human brain. It doesn't have the ability to create. So we're never going to have another Leonardo da Vinci that's generated by AI. But we are going to have a high-speed ability to analyze information, and using computer vision, then track that information and be able to put it onto a building model. And the building model can be a high-resolution architectural model, or it can be a photographic model. So there are a whole host of solutions. Now, where it really gets exciting is that this whole technology is not designed to replace engineers. Let me be really frank. So it's not an engineering solution. What it is an information gathering solution. And it produces that information in a highly visible and highly compact form. Now, you've all had over the years building inspections done by either engineers or professional inspectors, and they generally will produce a PDF type report or a hard copy report that gets thrown in the bottom of someone's drawer until it's needed again. Well, the beauty of this system is everything is digitized, and it's also highly selective and highly interactive. So I'll move on now, and I'm going to show you what a report looks like. Now, we generate the report from the images that we capture on a building. Our specialty is buildings really between 10 and 60 levels. Having said that, we can do buildings in the 5 to 10 range, but ideally 10 to 60. We've got 4 methods of doing that. We either lower our data capture device from the rooftop. If there's a building maintenance unit already on the building, we simply put our high-resolution cameras and sensor systems on that, or we can elevate it up from the ground up to 15 meters using a carbon fiber telescopic pole. And the last method we've got is we can use an automated winch system and tether a drone. Now, that is not designed to compete or overtake the drone-based inspection companies, far from it, but it simply augments some of the services we can provide. So we go on to the next slide. The benefits are 100% coverage of your building, generally in 50% of the time that it would take someone to actually do it by the traditional method of hanging over the side of the building on ropes with digital cameras, or with using gantries lowered up and down the side of the building. And importantly, it's done with 95% accuracy. Now, anyone that tells you that machine learning or AI is going to produce a 100% result for defect detection in every case is kidding you. The reality is that just as there is a human error built into all of the activities that humans conduct, there's also error within an AI system. Now, having said that, we claim 95%. The reality is that with our system, it's generally up around the 99%. There is always some aberration or something that actually fools the machine learning process. Now, the algorithm will detect 50 classes of defects, and they range right from cobwebs up to significant cracking and spalling in the concrete structure of the building, and everything in between. So it'll tell you where your paint is starting to delaminate. It'll tell you where your window seals are actually showing up, that they're either detaching from the window framing or that it's allowing leaks to get into the building. And particularly using the thermal imaging, that actually highlights by showing you a thermal bloom, it shows you where there is a difference in temperature, and the temperature usually is cold air getting in or out of a building or water getting in and out of the building. Now, the other thing is with our system is it's far quicker and far cheaper than a conventional engineering scoped inspection of a building, using rope access or using elevated work platforms or the like. So they are some of the great advantages. And above all, it takes the human factor out of putting someone in a risky position, hanging 40 or 50 meters over the ground or suspended in a work positioning platform. So there's a number of benefits from it. Now, the capability is not only do we actually determine what the defects are and where they are on the building, but there's also a very high resolution and comparative analysis that's conducted between the white light and the thermal image. So that actually gives the client a very good opportunity to actually have a look at, see what's in the thermal spectrum and what's in the white light spectrum. And that actually is probably one of the significant tools that comes with this system. If we move on, and I'll actually talk about what you actually get by way of a report, because this is where the advantage comes through. Because normally you would wait weeks for an engineering hard copy report. Our system is generally processed within 5 to 6 working days. It's positioned on a digital platform, and the digital platform will concentrate firstly on your building, and what it will show, it will give you the elevation of your building. It'll show all of the defects that have been detected on your building, and it will classify the defect locations in a fairly basic form to start with. It will actually give you a summary of all the defects by facade, and generally most buildings are only limited to 4 facades, but there are some aberrations where you've got circular towers or you've got octagons, but that's generally the format that we use. Now, it discriminates by the type of defect, and importantly, it pins it on a 2D model, and we use the architectural plans that come with a building. If they're not available, we then use the photogrammetry plans and model of the building that we can develop. Each defect that's identified is segmented by type, and there are, as I said, there's over 50 different types. In this one, we're choosing a concrete crack, so it shows where all the concrete cracks are on your building. It identifies them by number so that you can actually look at an individual location. And as I said, it's within 5 to 10 millimeters accuracy. It shows you where the defect is. It highlights it, gives you a brief description of it. Now, this is where it really gets valuable. There's a 30-time optical zoom in the white light and the thermal imaging. That actually gives the ability to get up close and personal. It also gives you the ability to do a thermal and a white light comparison of the defect. On each defect, there's a quick summary of what the defect is and with a suggested remedial work. this is where the report then comes into its own. Because it's an interactive report, you can actually design your own individual downloadable report in a Word, PDF, or Excel function. You can identify it by location, type of defect, or you can identify it by the severity of defects, because all defects are categorized in 3 types: safe, unsafe, and requiring repair. And it's color-coded. Red, obviously, is for something that is requiring urgent repair. Now, in this case, in this particular building, this is in the main thoroughfare in the middle of Brisbane. It had one unsafe item, and that was a piece of concrete about the size of a cricket ball that had detached from the building. Now, that's one of the abilities of this report, that it can actually quickly segment the type of defect, location, and the severity of the defect. So that's the power of this report. It stays on a digital platform. It doesn't get dropped in the bottom of someone's drawer, and it's readily accessible. Now, for those of you that operate your own management information systems, that reporting system is API compatible. So it can be integrated into any other management system that you've got with relative ease. So it's not as if that you need a separate system for the management of these sorts of reports. Now, what I'd like to do is invite you to visit our website or our YouTube station or our LinkedIn position. Now, you'll find on those 3 platforms access to a lot of videos that actually talk firstly about what the capability of the system is, and more importantly, what you as a consumer or client get out of it. Because the secret is that we've designed this system to be client-driven, and wholly and solely, it's to provide you with an end-to-end solution. That's why we've aligned ourselves with Sedgwick. So we work on the basis that we'll go out and do the data capture, we'll do the preliminary data analysis, then we'll bring in the expertise and the forensic engineering capability that Sedgwick's have got, that actually give you a one-stop shop, as it were, for defect management and then defect maintenance and remediation works. So that's where we're coming from. So if you've got any specific questions, I'm happy to actually deal with them either directly, or please feel free to reach out, contact me. At the end of the webinar today, you'll get all of our contact details, and I invite you to contact us. Our head office is in Brisbane, but we do have the capability to operate anywhere in Australia. At the moment, we haven't got a licensee in New Zealand, but we're currently talking to a couple of groups there.
And I might just give a little bit of commentary on these last few slides that we've got, because the video obviously ran through at its own pace, but it also has the capability to give you a defect summary, I guess, in this sort of format. So you can look at an individual building, but I'm assuming, Steve, as well, people might be able to look at portfolios as well if they've got portfolios of buildings, in particular strata managers and the like. This just gives you a bit more of a still opportunity to have a look at particular type of defect and how it focuses down on that individual issue. So it will actually identify the issue, in this instance, a concrete crack, but it will actually also, with the AI, give you a suggested solution. And the other reason that Sedgwick really likes this particular style of report, and the fact that it can be put into PDF, Word, or Excel, we can then go in and add additional information as is required, make comments around National Construction Code, Australian Standard compliance, and give more detail around that particular solution for that particular building in that particular circumstances as well. So it's got a lot of power and opportunity for, as I said, the remedial aspect, but also when it picks up, I guess, the less high risk issues, the opportunity to take that information and put in proactive plans to deal with something that might appear minor right now, but if we take a preventative approach, won't get to that safety or high risk level. Again, this is just a still or short slide showing the thermal difference. of a particular issue. In this instance, it's a
actually, Edwina, if I can just add some commentary to this one. For those of you that are in Brisbane, will be fascinated to know that this is the Queensland Children's Hospital. What this particular facade assessment determined is that for a building that's less than 10 years old, they had a fundamental flaw that all of the sealant, and I'll just highlight that area there, that shows where the sealant gasket and all of the cladding on the building had actually failed. Now, what had happened is that when the building was built, they used sealant gaskets that weren't UV stable, and over a period of about 7 to 10 years, all of those sealant gaskets shrunk to the extent that they started to delaminate and the whole building leaked. Now, currently they're going through the replacement of something like 3 kilometres of gasket sealant on those facades. So again, that was only really picked up by the thermal imaging because it actually highlighted what the particular problem was and where the thermal blooms went. Anyway, sorry, Edwina, I'll hand back to you now.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. That's great to have that explanation and put that image in context. And so in terms of applications of the Voltin system, I know we've talked a lot about it already, but just to go over some of those, like with the sync technology in its own capabilities, Voltin has the ability to do condition assessments that are applicable through the entire building life cycle. It's important to realise as well that there's a lot of regulatory requirements in the strata space, whether that's residential or commercial, to maintain your building and understand your asset and look after it. So if you know your building has problems or suspect it does, putting your head in the sand and thinking, oh, I'll put it away for a later date, is actually not meeting your statutory or regulatory requirements, which can vary from state to state, but they are all there. It can be used for construction defect management, as we've alluded to, and a big space that we're using it in is the warranty and defect liability inspection period. As we know, we've heard a lot in the media around builders going belly up, defects, what's happening in New South Wales through the Building Commissioner's Office, dealing with these sorts of issues, combustible cladding, and the like. So it's important to understand within those warranty periods what the problems are with your building so that you can then take the necessary steps, which often does mean going back to the builder to get those things rectified before your warranty period runs out. And to further complement any legal action you might want to take, this gives you a good snapshot of what's wrong with your building from the facade perspective in that space, where we also know a lot of our issues in strata are related to water ingress, and a lot of that water ingress is related to the external fabric of the building. There's also due diligence as part of sales and the acquisition process. As well, it's good to be able to understand what the health check of your building is like, so that you can then say, well, I've got a good asset. It's worth someone buying into that or investing in that particular business or building, I should say. Monitoring of maintenance, OPEX and CAPEX management, as we've alluded to, putting in place plans around larger remedial works projects. I myself have been through this on my own buildings. There is a lot of expense when it comes to these particular remedial or capital works programs. So it's good to know what you're up for in advance so you can start planning, particularly from the financial perspective as well, and getting all your ducks lined up in a row. And with the industry that we work in right now, through supply chain issues and the cost of materials and all those sorts of things, it's really important to be proactive because not everything is available at the snap of your fingers. So these things do take time. And then, as we alluded to, it's got the LiDAR capability as well, which allows you to build 2D and 3D plans in instances where you don't actually have that available to you through historical records. So on that basis, Nikki, I might just hand back over to you for any questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Edwina and Stephen. That was fascinating. Just the the scope of what you were speaking about. I think our audience was quite surprised about it as well. We've obviously had lots of comments coming through to say, how much does it cost and how can we find out more? Of course, I'd imagine that would be on a building basis, depending on what you were doing and how large the building is and what you were looking for. And I've just recommended to everybody that they do get in touch with either you, Edwina, or Stephen directly. We'll send the contact details out later today and have a chat with Edwina and Stephen about what your requirements are, and they can sort of point you in the right direction at that point. Now, I might get you, Edwina, to unshare your screen if that's okay, just so everyone can see us as we talk. One of the things I might just mention in regards to what the future might hold and where this might lead us, and we had a comment coming through if this should be included as a standard procedure after each new development finish in the future, or at least one optional extra package service to keep the original digital twin. And then Frank has commented the future is larger buildings will only be able to obtain insurance with a report conducted by an insurer or supplied. So I might just leave that with both of you if you'd like to speak on those points.
Sure, I'm happy to speak first. So in terms of the insurance aspect and doing something like this on every building post completion, there is actually a new insurance in the market being offered by a company called Resilience Insurance, which looks at latent defect insurance for 10 years post the construction period, that deals with if there are significant issues around structure, fire, operational mechanics of the building and those sorts of things, waterproofing, that we are looking at working with them to actually scan the building, ideally within the first 8 to 12 months post-completion, so that we can actually look at what the fabric of the building looks like, and to see that the building has actually been built to standard and to code. And again, in terms of I guess older buildings, it's good to have a baseline and a starting point. So for sure we can do that if the industry and individual owners corporations want to go down that path. Steve, do you want to add anything onto that?
The main point I'd make, Edwina, is this sort of technology gives you the ability as a building manager to have a longitudinal record of your building's condition, right from construction through to the demolition. It also gives the owners corporation a great opportunity when they're doing their sinking fund or maintenance fund forecast, that if they incorporate a function like this, it allows them to do some accurate prediction about the building maintenance requirements in 5 or 10 years. One example that we've recently, a job that we've done that actually is really relevant. It was a large apartment complex in a place called Redcliffe, just north of Brisbane. The building was about 10 years old, and it was up for a repaint. The building managers decided they'd actually get a full survey of the building done by us, use our report, and then as the scope of works when they actually went to tender for the repaint. And included in that was the identification of all the works that they wanted the painting company to actually fix up. Traditionally, painting companies make an absolute mozza out of variations that comes with the painting work. So they all quote for a paint job, and then they actually charge on a sessional rate for defect rectification. And inevitably, that's delaminating concrete cracks, chip paints, render that's falling off the building. So all those little jobs that don't appear to be much in the scheme of things suddenly end up costing a body corporate 20 or 30% more on their planned maintenance. So that's one of the facilities that can be used. It can actually facilitate maintenance planning in the short term and long term.
Okay, wonderful. And we've just had a question come through saying the vast majority of strata in regional Australia is low rise. So what's the opportunity to use the technology in single level or 2-story buildings? So
technically, and Steve, you can jump in after I've spoken, but technically it can be used on any type of building. However, as Steve alluded to in his presentation, the high rise is the sweet spot. However, we did do a low rise here in the centre of Sydney last week, actually a 4-storey walk-up that is experiencing extensive water ingress. And it can technically, as I said, be used on any kind of building. However, when it comes to, I guess, more domestic style living like townhouses and the like, we can move across and use the sink technology as well, which we have, as I said, we've been using that significantly in that sort of space for the last 2 to 3 years as well. But we wouldn't exclude, and Steve, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we wouldn't exclude anything per se. But ultimately, between the two technologies, we would be able to come up with a solution and capture the information required to resolve any building related issues.
If I can just add to it, recently we did a 48 townhouse complex here in Brisbane. It had reached the end of its structural warranty, and we surveyed all the buildings. Most of the buildings were 2 and 3 levels, and so we could actually do that using our ground-mounted telescopic pole. So what we do is that we detach our cameras and sensors off our autobat, mount them on the end of a pole, and there's an automation control system that goes with it, and that's a relatively simple process. Again, probably not the ideal use of our technology, because a lot of the same inspections could be conducted by a qualified building inspector from the ground level, especially when you're only looking at 1 and 2 levels above the ground. But having said that, we're never going to say never to that sort of work, and that allows a building complex manager then to have a comprehensive report that stays live for as long as the building is being managed.
Okay, thank you very much. We also had a question about, does the application, or is the application usable by OC managers to create a digital twin themselves? Maybe training or something if it's too complicated. I guess the underlying question is how it's the best use for OC managers of the technology.
Steve, I'll let you answer on the Voltin side of things, but on the Sync side of things, to get your virtual reality tour that I presented on the first part of the presentation, it does take a special kind of camera. It's called Matterport technology, and so you would need to engage a third-party expert to do that, because it does need to be done in a certain way, and also depending on the building, you might need to combine the Matterport camera technology and the drone technology to get the 360-degree assessment of the structure internally and externally. It's not an overly expensive exercise for the output that you get. So we can share pricing later with the members of this. I'll get some up-to-date pricing. We're happy to share that on what the average pricing looks like. And in terms of the Voltin pricing as well, we'll be able to share some information and insight around that. But the whole idea of using AI is to be more efficient from a time perspective, more efficient from a cost perspective, and also just the output that you get and the fact that you have this digital profile that's long lasting, and that you can go back and leverage time and time again. That's the output you're paying for the investment that you're making.
What are the system's capabilities to identify thermal losses to improve energy efficiency of buildings?
Great question. We're currently working with a company called International Real Estate Partners who are in 50 countries, and one of their big things is the introduction of technology for facility management. They are currently developing a comprehensive energy auditing system using both our system with the external thermal imaging, combined with the internal thermal assessment and thermal monitoring, to have a comprehensive energy auditing platform. Now, we know that in the not too far distant future, that there is actually going to be a specialized AI-based platform that's actually going to be able to provide energy audits for building owners. It's designed primarily for the industrial and commercial space, but it will have applicability in high-rise residential, especially where the building has its own integral HVAC system, and it has the capacity for negative pressure in the HVAC system. So they are that is the future development, and it's not that far away.
We will obviously see a lot more in this environmental space with environmental social governance becoming a big part of industry and the like. And yeah, the technology is definitely moving that way. And also with government advocating for that sort of change and being carbon neutral and that side of things, I think it's only natural that that's the way that the technology is going to evolve.
All right, we also had a few questions about the fact that things change and how often would you have to rescan the building, and then we just in conjunction with that, do you repeat the process once the rectifications have been carried out?
Short answer to that question is, how often do you do this? If it was a commercial building, under the Building Code of Australia, commercial buildings are supposed to be inspected every 5 years to ensure the safety of the building envelope. In terms of the residential strata, I'm not quite sure how rigidly that Building Code of Australia regulation is applied, but I suspect it's a guideline only. Having said that, it's probably worthwhile for in the strata world that if a building is first constructed, that it's actually inspected in the first year or so, particularly prior to the end of the defect liability period, and then it's looked at possibly every 10 years and looked at in conjunction with major renovation or remediation works, repainting. So also looked at in terms of developing the maintenance or sinking fund forecast that is required under law. So I'd say as a guide, body corporates and community living could look at getting their building inspected every 5 to 10 years, probably 10 years is the max. It's a bit like, how often do you get your windows washed in a high-rise building? Is it 6 monthly, 12 monthly, or when someone complains? So again, it's going to be based on need.
And again, another impact to that could be if you've done a big capital works project as well, you might want to get it done within, again, the warranty period of that work's being done. Or if your insurer is demanding to know the status of the building, you could show the before and the after. So it depends on every individual situation. I did see some questions popping up around price. I will give you a very generic response to that. As you said, Nikki, it does relate to the complexity and structure of the building, but it is charged for the Voltin technology at a per square meter rate. So again, depending on the complexity of the building and how many of those different types of technologies, whether it's the BMU, a combination of drone, the pole, what's needed as to what it costs. So it could be anywhere from $1.20 a square meter up to $1.80 per square meter. So if you think about that from a facade perspective, if you're looking at a 6,000 square meter facade, including a roof, you look about $7,500 to do that building. Now that might seem like a big number, but when you're looking at about $1,200 a floor to get the output that you then have long-term to use in all those different ways, whether that's reactive or proactive, that's a small investment to make, particularly on bigger buildings. And when you break it down per lot, that's a small investment to make sure that you're managing your building properly. So hopefully that gives you some insight into that side of things. Yeah.
Fortunately or unfortunately, architects have made sure that there's no commonality in buildings, that every building's got a unique set of unique features and unique access issues. So it's relatively easy to actually come up with a spread of costs. But the one thing I would say is that getting a comprehensive condition assessment done using digital technology is about 50% of the price of getting an engineering consultancy firm to do it.
It also sounds like to me you would probably save that back in other costs, because you can exactly pinpoint what you're looking for and what work needs to be done in the building. Edwina, did you have anything final to add to what we've shared today?
Sure, I will just share my screen for one more minute so that people can scan a QR code, and that will put you through to the landing page, which has a lot more information about Sedgwick, Voltin, etc. Okay, so there's the QR code if people want to scan it. But as we've touched on earlier, this is not a substitute for humans, right? So we want to just stress that this is a complementary technology that allows us to capture information in a different way and use that data in the most effective and time and cost-effective manner possible. So I think that, a lot of people are scared of artificial intelligence, but we have to realize that it's here, part of the world we live in, and how do we harness that to our advantage. So I guess that's the parting thought that I would like to leave everyone with. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Edwina and Stephen, and it's really great to have you here. I think it was a really important session to have. I think most people would probably agree that the information that you provided was a bit mind-blowing, and it's great to look to the future and see how we can benefit from the advancements that are being made. If you gained value from this video, please hit like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're looking for information about parking, strata insurance, defects and more, head over to lookupstrata.com.au or sign up to our free weekly newsletter via the link in the description box below.